The wrong embraced the fluorescent lights of JFK Airport buzzed overhead as Hannah Brooks clutched her homemade sign, "Welcome back, Troubles," scrawled in purple marker. Her heart hammered with anticipation as she watched passengers emerge from the international terminal. After months of double shifts at the airport cafe and sleepless nights worrying about her younger brother Noah's mounting medical bills, today was supposed to bring a moment of joy. She spotted him a media teletile, dark-haired, wearing a charcoal coat and carrying a leather bag. Without hesitation, Hannah rushed forward and threw her arms around the familiar silhouette. "Oh my God, I missed you so much," she whispered into his coat, breathing in an unfamiliar scent of cedar and something expensive. The man stiffened. Slowly, he peeled her arms away from him. "God, I think you've mistaken me for someone else," came. A voice that was definitely not her brother's, low, controlled, and utterly unfamiliar. Hannah pulled back to find herself staring into piercing gray eyes set in a face she'd never seen before. Sharp cheekbones, clean-shaven jaw, and an essence that seemed to command the chaos around them into silence. "I'm so sorry," she stammered, her cheeks burning. "You looked exactly like my brother from behind." The stranger raised an eyebrow, his mouth twitching slightly. "It's all right. Happens more often than you'd think, though usually not quite." That enthusiastically, before Hannah could die of embarrassment, she heard her name called from behind. The real Ethan stood there, waving and looking nothing like the man she'd just assaulted with affection. When she turned back to apologize again, the stranger was already walking away, his coat swaying with each measured step. He didn't look back. That night, lying in her cramped apartment, Hannah couldn't shake the memory of those gray eyes or the way everything had gone. It was quiet for just a moment when she'd looked into them. She didn't know his name, would never see him again. Yet something about that mistake felt like the beginning of something she couldn't name. The return 3 days later, Hannah was behind the counter of the airport cafe, trying to forget the embarrassing encounter. The morning rush was in full swing when the door chimed, and she looked up to see him walk in same coat, same commanding presence, same gray eyes that seemed to see everything. He approached the counter with deliberate steps, studying her face, like he was memorizing it. "I was hoping you'd be here," he said simply. Hannah's hands tightened around the coffee pot. "Do you want something?" "Black. Made by you." She blinked. "You came back for coffee?" He leaned in slightly, his tone teasing but unreadable. "Let's just say I was curious if your coffee is as bold as your hugs." Right. Despite herself, Hannah laughed. She made his coffee extra hot, no sugar, no cream, and brought it to the corner booth where he'd settled by the window. "Let me know if it tastes like disappointment," she said, placing it gently on the table. "I don't expect anything less than extraordinary," he replied, meeting her, eyes with infuriating calm. For the next 20 minutes, he simply sat Torino phone, no laptop, just sipping his coffee and observing. When he finally left, he placed a crisp $20 bill on the table for a $4 coffee. He came back the next day, and the day after that, always at the same time, always ordering the same coffee, always asking specifically for her to make it. On the fourth morning, he arrived wearing a navy scarf that made his eyes seem almost blue. The cafe was packed, and Hannah was rushing between orders when she noticed him waiting patiently by the counter. "You really don't have to wait for me every day," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "But I want to." His expression didn't change. "Because you're real." Hannah frowned. "What does that even mean?" "You're not performing. You don't care who I am. That's rare." He pulled out a business card and slid it across the counter, "In case you ever need anything." Hannah glanced at the name printed in elegant letters, Liam Carter, CEO Carter Enterprises. Her stomach dropped. Carter Enterprises, massive company she'd seen in headlines, known for media, tech, and hospitality empires across the globe. "Why? Me?" she asked quietly. His answer was just as quiet, "'Cause you didn't flinch when you found out who I am." "I haven't decided if I like you yet," she said honestly. He smiled, first real smile she'd seen from him. "Fair enough." Left Hannah stared at the business card, her mind racing. What did a man like that really want with a girl like her? The weight of reality the next morning, Hannah found a small potted plant on her prep station with a note attached. Even the strongest roots grow better when someone cares. No signature, but she knew it was from Liam. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to smile on the walk home. The streets of Queens pulsed with their usual chaos, but somehow everything felt quieter, less overwhelming. That peace shattered the moment she stepped into their tiny apartment. Noah was curled up on the couch, pale and sweating, a damp cloth on his forehead. Her 19-year-old brother had been struggling for months, fatigue, nausea, weight loss. The doctors had finally given a name to the monster: early-stage renal failure. Hannah knelt beside him, brushing hair from his clammy forehead. "Hey, you okay?" He forced a smile. "Just tired." The insurance was barely covering diagnostics, let alone the surgery he'd need. Their mother's life insurance had gone to funeral costs. Ethan helped where he could, but he had his own family now. It had always been Hannah's job to keep things afloat, and she was drowning. That night, after Noah was asleep, she sat in the cramped kitchen staring at medical estimates that made her stomach twist. The zeros blurred together, deadlines pressed like weights on her chest. She didn't run out of tears weeks ago. She just whispered to the empty room, "What am I going to do?" 2 days later, Liam didn't come to the cafe. Hannah missed him more than she cared to admit. On the third day, he returned, but something had changed. He looked unsettled, as if he'd been thinking too hard about something he didn't know how to say. After his coffee, he waited until the last customer had left, then stood at the counter. "Do you have 10 minutes?" he asked quietly. She glanced toward the back room where her manager was doing inventory. "Depends. Is this about coffee beans or something more dangerous?" "More dangerous." Hannah hesitated, then nodded. "Fine, but if I end up in a van with tinted windows, I'm screaming." He didn't laugh. He sat in his car, outside a sleek black. The vehicle she didn't dare touch too much. She sat stiffly, her hands folded in her lap. "I know about your brother," Liam said suddenly. Hannah's blood ran cold. "What?" "Noah, the medical bills, the surgery he needs." She stared at him, her heart pounding. "How do you know that?" "I had you investigated." The words hit her like a physical blow. "You had me what?" "I needed to understand why you were different, why you didn't want anything from me." Hannah's hand was already on the door handle. "Let me out." "Hannah, wait, no, you had me investigated like I'm some kind of criminal? Like I'm not allowed to have privacy?" "I can help," he said desperately. "The surgery, the bills, stop." Her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "Just stop." Out of the car and walked away, her whole body shaking with anger and humiliation. Behind her, she heard him call her name, but she didn't turn back. Some mistakes, she realized, changed everything. Some of them couldn't be undone. The breaking point, Liam didn't come to the cafe for a week. Hannah told herself she was relieved, but every morning at 9:04, she found herself glancing at the door. The routine she'd grown accustomed to his quiet presence, their careful conversations. The way he made her feel seen had become more important than she'd realized. On day 8, Noah collapsed in their apartment. Hannah found him unconscious on the bathroom floor, his skin gray and cold. The ambulance ride to the hospital was a blur of sirens and her brother's labored breathing. In the emergency room, a young doctor with kind eyes delivered the news that made Hannah's world tilt sideways. "His kidney function has deteriorated faster than we anticipated. He needs surgery within the next 2 weeks, or we're looking at complete renal failure." Hannah nodded numbly, her mind already calculating numbers that wouldn't add up. The surgery would cost more than she made in 2 years. "We can discuss payment plans," the doctor continued gently. "But I won't lie to you, this is expensive." After the doctor left, Hannah sat beside Noah's hospital bed, watching him sleep. His face was peaceful, unaware of the impossible choice she was facing. She pulled out her phone and stared at Liam's business card, now worn from being handled. So many times, pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. Not when Noah's life hung in the balance. She dialed the number. "Hannah." Liam's voice was surprised, hopeful. "I need help," she said quietly, the words scraping her throat raw. "Where are you?" "Mount Sinai Hospital, room 314. I'm on my way." 20 minutes later, he appeared in the doorway, still in an expensive suit but with his tie loosened and hair slightly disheveled, as if he'd run. His eyes immediately went to Noah, then to Hannah's tear-stained face. "Tell me what you need," he said simply. "I can't pay you back," she whispered. "Not ever. The surgery costs more than I'll make in my lifetime. I'm not asking you to pay me back." "Then what are you asking?" It was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. "For you to let me care about you. For you to stop running away when things get complicated." Hannah looked at her brother, so young and fragile in the hospital bed. "I can't owe you this much." "You don't owe me anything," Liam said firmly. "But if you want to give me something in return, give me a chance. A real chance. Not the careful distance you've been keeping." She met his eyes, seeing something there. She'd been afraid to recognize not pity, not obligation, but something deeper. Something that had been growing since that first mistaken hug. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you care so much about a girl you barely know?" "Because," he said, sitting down in the chair beside her, "you're the first person in years who hugged me because you thought I was someone you loved. Not because of what I could give you, but because of what I meant to you. Even if it was by mistake." Hannah felt tears she'd been holding back for weeks finally spill over. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of what?" "Of needing you. Of this being real and then losing it." He reached for her hand, his fingers warm and steady. "Then don't think about losing it. Think about having it." The next morning, Noah's surgery was scheduled. As the medical team prepared him for the procedure, Hannah signed papers that would have been impossible without Liam's help. But more than that, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months: hope. Standing in the hospital corridor, watching the man who'd entered her life through a case of mistaken identity make phone calls to ensure her brother received the best care possible, Hannah realized that sometimes the biggest mistakes led to the most important discoveries. And sometimes, love really did begin with a wrong turn that led to exactly the right place. The right place 6 months later. Hannah was making coffee in a different kitchen, one with marble countertops and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Central Park. She still made it the same way. Black, no sugar, no cream, exactly how Liam liked it. "You know I have a full staff who could do that," he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "But they don't make it with the right amount of attitude," she replied, leaning back against his chest. Noah appeared in the doorway, looking healthier than he had in years. The surgery had been successful, and his recovery had been remarkable. More importantly, he was back to teasing his sister mercilessly. "Are you two going to be disgustingly cute every morning?" he asked, grabbing an apple from the fruit bowl. "Probably," Hannah said, not apologizing. "Good," Noah grinned. "You deserve it." Later that evening, Hannah found herself back at JFK Airport. But this time, she wasn't waiting for anyone. She was walking through the terminal with Liam there. Hands intertwined, heading to the gate for their flight to Italy, their first vacation together. They paused near the spot where they'd first met, where a case of mistaken identity had set everything in motion. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd hugged the right person that day?" Hannah asked. Liam pulled her closer, his gray eyes warm with affection. "Every day. And then I remember that you did hug the right person. It just took us a while to figure it out." "You really believe that?" "I believe that some mistakes are actually the universe's way of putting things back in order." Hannah smiled, thinking about the journey that had brought them here, from that embarrassing moment in the airport to the quiet mornings in the cafe. From the devastating news about Noah to the slow, careful building of trust between two people who'd learned that love wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, even when it was scary. It was about letting someone see you at your worst and choosing to stay anyway. It was about discovering that sometimes the best things in life came from the most unexpected places. As they boarded their plane, Hannah reflected on how drastically her life had changed. She'd kept her job at the cafe, not because she needed it anymore, but because she loved it. Liam had learned to find peace in the simple routine of their mornings together. Noah was healthy and starting college in the fall, and she and Liam had learned that real love wasn't the fairy tale kind. It was messier, more complicated, and infinitely more rewarding. 6 months ago, she'd been a girl just trying to survive another day. Now she was a woman who'd learned that sometimes love begins with a mistake, and sometimes that mistake changes everything in exactly the way it was meant to. As their plane lifted off into the night sky, Hannah squeezed Liam's hand and smiled. Some wrong turns, she'd discovered, led to exactly the right destination. Let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more heart-touching tales. Wishing you a beautiful day now.